What's going on, everybody? In this video, as you can see by the title, I will be explaining why the NFL needs expansion. The NFL needs expansion for a handful of reasons, whether it's to bump up the number of teams in the league from 32 to 34, 36, or even 40 teams. Each of these scenarios will be discussed in this video. However, let me tell you one reason why the NFL needs to expand right now. It's because there's a ton of money being thrown around the league to each team, etc., etc. From TV deals with Amazon Prime, ESPN, and other networks, to the salary cap going up over the next few years. In this video, I'm going to break down why the NFL needs to expand, backing up my reasons with facts, data, reports, and more. Also, I'm going to provide a list of potential expansion cities that could see an NFL team call home and why these cities make sense as possible expansion cities. So if this sounds like a video for you, stick around. Why am I making this video? The purpose of this video is to elaborate on my channel's top performing video, why MLB needs expansion, as I still do believe they should expand to 32 teams. However, there have been rumors heating up that the NFL could see expansion sooner than later. Of the four major sports in North America, football, baseball, basketball, and hockey, the NHL is the most recent league to expand and has endured an immense amount of success because of their move from 30 teams to 32 teams. The Vegas Golden Knights first started play in 2017-2018's NHL season as they broke countless records for an expansion team across the four major sports. In their first year, they made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. However, they did lose that series. But nonetheless, since their inception in 2017-2018, they've made it to the playoffs every year with the exception of this most recent season in 2021-22. The NHL brought a team to a market that didn't have a sports team previously, nor any other team in the general area, and like the Golden Knights, the NHL's 32nd and newest team, the Seattle Kraken, has brought hockey back to Seattle, although they didn't endure the same or similar success as the Knights did in their first season. The Kraken are in a market and region that will thrive with having an NHL team locally. The NHL hasn't had expansion since the 2002 season when they introduced the Houston Texans into the league, and upon the introduction, the league had to completely realign their divisions. Since the AFL-NFL merger in 1970, the NFL has only had 6 expansion teams: the Seattle Seahawks, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Carolina Panthers, Jacksonville Jaguars, Baltimore Ravens, and the Houston Texans. Those teams have a combined winning percentage of .467, while the other 26 NFL teams have an average of .527. However, the combined winning percentage of the 6 expansion teams are better than the following teams: the New Orleans Saints, Detroit Lions, Cincinnati Bengals, New York Jets, Atlanta Falcons, and the Arizona Cardinals. This data shows that an expansion team or teams can perform and win at a respectable level or at similar level to the teams that have been around prior to the AFL-NFL merger. How many teams would be introduced? The obvious answer of how many teams to introduce is 2. It would be easier to expand to only 2 more teams, and you would only have to find 2 groups of investors to invest in these new teams instead of 4 groups, 6 groups, even 8 groups, depending on how many you want to bump up the league to. However, expanding only 2 teams would cause an imbalance in the league, as there would be 34 teams total, either resulting in 17 teams in each conference or 18 teams in one and 16 teams in the other. Either way, there would be an imbalance in the divisions, as if each conference had 17 teams, one division would have a 5th team, while the rest had still 4 teams. If they decided to have a conference with 18 teams, then 2 divisions would have 5 teams, while the other 2 would still only have 4 teams. Now let's look at the NFL expanding to 36 teams and how this would introduce 4 new teams to the NFL. However, it wouldn't make the league's divisional structure any easier to formulate adding these new teams. 4 more teams would add to the league, with 2 teams assigned to each conference, resulting in 18 teams per conference. Again, if the current divisional structure remains the same, 2 divisions in each conference would have 5 teams, while the other 2 divisions would still have 4. Now, an expansion of 4 teams pushing the league to 36 teams would work with even division structures if each conference only had 3 divisions, like there was when the AFL-NFL merger took place in 1970, all the way up to 2001, when the NFL realigned their divisions, removing the Central Division and introducing the North and South divisions. One form of expansion that has been brought up is a massive 8-team expansion resulting in 40 total NFL teams. Personally, this is a lot and I don't want to see 40 teams, but it is possible and will make division alignment the easiest out of the previous possible expansions discussed. If the NFL expanded to 40 teams, the league would be able to keep their current division structure of 4 divisions per conference. However, just add an additional team to each division within each conference. This may not work as easy as I'm saying it though, based on where these expansion teams get located. Obviously, we want to see teams in divisions based off a geological location. Sure, you could throw any team anywhere if you want, but making divisions based on the team's location just makes sense and seems right to me. I don't want to see a league where the Arizona Cardinals are in the NFC East, while the Carolina Panthers, New Orleans Saints, and the Atlanta Falcons are all playing in the NFC West. Personally, I think it's dumb that the Dallas Cowboys are in the NFC East, but that's a conversation for another day. With the most realistic options for expansion broken down and explained, I believe the most realistic one is the league's expansion for 2 teams, pushing the league to 34 teams. Adding too many teams at once seems risky, and in a society that currently has high levels of inflation and lingering COVID-19 concerns, a league expansion of more than 2 teams seems risky for the league for the time being. I believe expanding to 2 teams makes the most sense only if those 2 teams are incepted into the league together. We saw the NHL expand to 31 teams in 2017, then introduce the 32nd team in 2021. I believe the NFL's transition from 32 to 34 teams would be easier if both teams were incepted together. This would allow the NFL to conduct 1 expansion draft instead of multiple, like we most recently saw with the NHL in 2017 with the Vegas Golden Knights and in 2021 with the Seattle Kraken. So now let's discuss potential expansion cities and markets. There have been tons of news and reports that have surfaced of some cities and markets wanting to have an NFL franchise expand to their area or a second team introduced to the area. Some of the following cities and markets I'm about to list off are areas that have been linked to either an expansion or relocation team for some time now. Others have been from recent reports that have come up in the news or from research that I've conducted for this video. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with any of these cities that I list right now. I would love to hear what you have to say. This list is a list of 8 cities or regions, and they're in no particular order, but with number 1, London. It's no secret that the NFL would love to have a full-time franchise in London. The NFL is having London host multiple games a year that has generated a lot of success both for the City of London and the NFL. In terms of a stadium, there are already multiple existing options, including Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which is only a couple of years old and was built with hosting NFL games in mind. Obviously, travel would be a little more difficult, but the NFL could arrange for the London franchise to play mostly East Coast teams on the road to reduce travel as much as possible. With this in mind, I'm left to believe that London would not work based on the travel stipulations alone. Teams that play out in London throughout the year currently have a bye week following their trip out to London, with jet lagging, long flights across the Atlantic Ocean being a concern for the players. Number 2, St. Louis, Missouri. It's not like St. Louis hasn't had an NFL franchise before, so it's not a stretch of any imagination that they would be high up on the list of potential expansion cities. St. Louis is a wonderful Midwest city that already supports both a pro baseball and a pro hockey franchise with success. There's also potential for a natural rivalry with Kansas City should an NFL franchise return to St. Louis. Number 3, Austin, Texas. It still surprises me that Austin doesn't have a pro sports franchise besides Austin FC for the MLS, who are one of the most recent expansion teams in MLS. After all, it's the capital of Texas and has no problem hosting tens of thousands of fans for football games on Saturdays. The city is far enough for both Dallas and Houston to create its own fan base that separates from those cities. Austin is such a fun and vibrant city already that putting a football stadium downtown would be a great addition to an already amazing city. Sticking in Texas with number 4, Dallas, Texas. The city of Dallas, Texas has already one football team, the Dallas Cowboys. However, the mayor of Dallas, Mayor Eric Johnson, has publicly stated that the city could and should host 2 NFL teams. Here's what he had to say about that. Quote, "We are about to pass Chicago Metro and become the number 3 metro in the United States, which would make us the largest U.S. metro without 2 teams. Football is king here. Dallas needs an expansion team, and we would be able to sustain 2. So if a deal could be made that benefits the NFL, the other owners, the city of Dallas, and possibly the Cowboys, it's a no-brainer. But here's the rub. If it benefits all the stakeholders I just mentioned except Jerry Jones, does that mean a deal couldn't or shouldn't happen? I'm not so sure, and it's my job as mayor to ask these types of questions when my city and its residents stands to benefit. I'm both a sports fan and a lover of Dallas. If LA and New York can support both an NFC and an AFC team, then Dallas, the capital of football, surely can. I don't know how realistic Dallas getting a second NFL team is, but it's certainly an interesting one to discuss. How do Cowboy fans feel about this? Number 5, Portland, Oregon. Anybody who's ever visited Portland knows that it's a special city. The sports fans there have supported the Trailblazers for a long time and go crazy for the Timbers of the MLS. On some level, it'd be nice to give the Seahawks a close geographic rival, but Portland would also make a good home for an NFL expansion franchise for other reasons as well. Being on the West Coast, where most of the NFL teams are on the East Coast, again, geographic rival to Seattle, and plus you would introduce a new market to a state and region that hasn't had a football team previously. Number 6, Canada. Oh, Canada! The country of Canada has never had a professional NFL team and may be due for one. Yes, Canada has the CFL, but is nowhere near comparable to the NFL and what an NFL team could do for a Canadian city. Possible cities in Canada consist of Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, and Winnipeg. Each city has pros and cons behind them, however, they all share one thing in common outside of being a Canadian city, and that is that they all host current NHL teams with success, which leads me to believe that an NFL team could thrive in Canada as well. Personally, I think Vancouver works best being a Pacific Coast team and would give the Seahawks a close geographic rival, just like Portland would. Number 7, Salt Lake City, Utah. Salt Lake City is bigger than most people realize and would have more than enough fans to support an NFL team. Keep in mind, the state of Utah has multiple college football teams that have a strong following. A Salt Lake franchise would also attract fans from nearby states whose closest NFL franchise is either Denver or Las Vegas. The city of Salt Lake has hosted the Utah Jazz, being their only professional sports franchise for over 4 decades. An NFL team would be supported just fine in Salt Lake City, with all things considered. And last but not least, number 8, Memphis, Tennessee. Adding another NFL franchise in the South would be ideal for the NFL, making Memphis a great option for a new team. The city already supports an NBA franchise and a semi-major college football team. There's also no question that it loves football. A new franchise could play in the Liberty Bowl right away and perhaps look to build a new stadium down the line. Additionally, it would give the Tennessee Titans a great interstate rival. As a side note, 3 of these cities were also on my Why MLB Needs to Expand video. Cities like Portland, Vancouver, and Memphis. The talks surrounding the NFL on expansion have heated up as of late, and it seems like it's inevitable. In my opinion, the question is when and how many teams. There are tons of discussions that can derive from a major sports league like the NFL wanting to expand, and this video is just one of those discussions. A discussion that I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, could you please leave a like rating on this video, as I would greatly appreciate it. Also, what do you think of the NFL possibly expanding? Do you want the league to expand? Why or why not? And if you do, how many teams and where do you want those expansion teams to call home? I can't wait to read and respond to the comments down below. Lastly, could you please consider hitting the giant red subscribe button, as I would greatly appreciate the love and support by subscribing to the channel. But that's going to do it for this one. If you enjoyed the video, then I already queued up a wonderful video that I know you're going to enjoy, and hopefully I will see you in that one.